Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you're back here because I have a very special guest, one all the way from overseas, although in this day of technology, that's of course not so special anymore. It's still special to me. I'm here today with Peter Brandl. He is based in Germany and is a speaker who delivered over a couple of decades over 3,500 talks to audiences. So should be a good guest. I invited him into the business emergency room because he's a former pilot who now talks about leadership and management and communication. And as you can imagine, taking it from the pilot world, that involves some high pressure situations and last minute or in the minute setups. He's also the author of 8 books, and I'm very glad that he's joining us today. Leadership today isn't just about scaling. It's about navigating constant uncertainty, market disruptions, and high-pressure decisions. If you're dealing with chaos, bottlenecks, and relentless pressure, welcome to the Business Emergency Room. Thank you for coming, Peter.
Thank you, Maartje, for having me.
Yes, so I'm, of course, Dutch and Peter is German, so we are neighbors in Europe officially. That's where the accents that you hear today. Peter, would you mind starting off telling us a little bit more about how you take the concept of your life as a pilot, or how you took the concept of being a pilot into the leadership space, and how that's been helpful in the setup of what you do today?
Well, actually, I am still a pilot. So I don't fly airline anymore, but I'm still a pilot. And what I do is I'm training pilots. So I'm a flight instructor and I'm training pilots. And I'm training them in a very special topic. And this is called CRM, which is in our world is called crew resource management. And this is all about the human factor. So in aviation, if something happens, if an accident or an incident, it's usually not because of any technical issues, but it's because of what we as human beings did or do. And this is the human factor. I consciously do not say human failure, but it's the human factor. And this is what I'm training airline crews to be aware of. And it happened a few years ago that I did one of these pilots training, though. And you can just imagine these trainings. This is a 2-day or sometimes 3-day workshop, and you are analyzing accidents, really dig deep. What happened? Why did it happen? And of course, what do we need to do to avoid this in the future? And I do this training, I think, on a Friday and Saturday. And on the next Monday and Tuesday, I had a leadership training for a very big European bank. And somehow I forgot to switch. So, of course, you have to make sure you are aware who is your audience, who is listening. But somehow, maybe I needed some days off. I don't know. But I forgot to switch. And I took only aviation disasters. Catastrophes, for example, for my leadership training in the bank. Somehow, no matter what their topics, it was about leadership culture. It was about how to deal with when something went wrong, or if a person gets sick or whatever. And therefore, everything used examples from aviation. And after 2 days, they came up to me and said, "Hey, Peter, actually, this was not exactly what we expected, because leadership training with more than 5,000 fatalities, we did not have in this way before. But somehow it worked." So, and of course, an aircraft is steered, is commanded, is controlled by human beings. And a team and a whole corporate is also controlled, is steered, is managed by human beings. And in aviation, what we do have in aviation, we have a very profound research about this human factor. So we know a lot what are the circumstances, what are the parameters that have to come together that we start to make mistakes. And if you have these learnings here, why do not transfer it to the other world? And this is what I'm doing since then. And the beauty is that this metaphor is very easy to understand for almost everybody, not only the top managers, but also for a regular employee who's just doing his or her job. It's a very profound, very common sense, hands-on advice. So, and yeah, this is what I'm doing since.
Yeah, and I love that metaphor. I'm a sailor, so people who tune in regularly know that that's the metaphor I often use. And it's intriguing how people, when it comes to planes or when it comes to boats, understand that when you hit a storm, doing nothing is not an option because you're already in motion. But in the corporate world, quite often when the storm hits, we do choose inertia, or we kind of hope to wait it out. So you were talking earlier about the parameters that need to be present for human failure to start to escalate or occur or start to happen at levels that it's problematic. So can you talk a little bit about what some of these parameters are that are really the big red flags that are quite common and underestimated?
So first of all, you were talking about being a sailor, and I'm an aviator. I had when during my visits in the United States, I had a lot of conversation with former members of the U.S. military as veterans, and in the military, it's almost the same. So if you have a job to do under pressure, the job is to do under pressure, and your life is at risk, then the main learnings are more or less the same. Of course, in military, it's something, but the basics are the same. And of course, I'm an aviator. That's why I use this. So to answer your question, what are some of the red flags? The first and most important thing we have to understand is that we have to understand it. We are human beings and we have to be aware of our limitations. So the awareness, and in aviation, we call it situational awareness. It's quite easy. Just imagine we are talking about, for example, communication. We always think and say that communication is something, it's obvious, it has to work, and we rely on the fact that we believe it always works. But if I would tell you a short story, and then do this in my speeches, I tell my listeners a short story, 4 sentences, no tricks, no traps, just 4 stories, 4 sentences, 1 story. Short sentences, not German words, short sentences. And after this, and directly after that, I asked 4 questions. Yes or no questions, or multiple choice, easy to answer questions. And when I have more than 10 people in the room, I have nothing in line. I have nothing in common. So there's not a single answer. Everyone is answering the same. So there's not one single question. Everyone is answering the same. So you have ideal conditions. You know it's a test. You hear 4 sentences, a short story, and you have to answer 3 yes or no questions. And even this simple task, we are not able to perform in a 100% correct way. So people will make mistakes. Another thing.
Sorry, Peter, you mean correct that as in that even from a story that's only 4 sentences, people take different things away and hence respond differently. So that's not necessarily an entirely right or wrong or life or death situation, but from our interpretation of such a short piece of information already varies wildly enough to answer different simple questions very differently.
Exactly. And this is just how it is. It's not about good or bad or right or wrong. It's just how it is. And if we understand this, we understand that human communication is not safe. It's just not safe. It may be safe in an easy environment. So if we are cool together, if we like each other, if we have no trouble, if we don't have stress, then it's easy. But there are times when the circumstances are everything but easy, when they are everything but cool. And then the mishaps happen. By the way, it's a fantastic English word. We do not have a direct translation of mishap in German, but it's just a mishappening. So something does not happen in the way it should happen. That's it. No right or wrong, no valuing, just it is how it is.
And no bad intent either, typically, huh?
Exactly.
No.
And from the moment we understand this, then just imagine next time we understand that it's just human communication is unreliable. From the moment we understand this, next time we do have a conflict, we go into the situation and we think, hey, maybe it's not that we have a conflict. Maybe we do not have a conflict. Maybe it's only I don't understand you, or I'm not able to explain myself, express myself in the way that you can understand what's important for me and why. And just imagine if you just think about any situation where you had communicational problems, and you would enter the situation with this mindset, hey, maybe we do not have a conflict. Maybe it's just we don't understand each other. Then your following actions would be different. Yeah. And so this is what I mean when I say awareness. The most important thing is that we have to become aware of our limitations. If we are aware, then we can deal with them. And the next thing is that we are setting priorities. For example, if our engines are on fire, then we don't argue. Then we don't even look for who is responsible that the engines are on fire. Our only focus is how to get them working again. Yeah. So on what are we focusing, for example?
Yeah. Yeah, the prioritization, the joke amongst my friends is for a couple of years I sailed lots with friends. So yes, I was the captain, but there was plenty of others on board who were decent sailors too, and it was changing groups, and it was a bit of a debate club on typically every other topic in life. But I would always explain to them at the beginning of a trip, if we get to a point where I'm clearly at a loud voice telling you to do A, B, or C, you do A, B, or C. It's paramount that in that moment you do whatever it is that I tell you to do, and we can have a debate club over a beer later if you think I made the wrong decision in the moment. But it's not helpful to have several things going on when things happen, right? So I'm hearing the prioritization, realizing that communication is inherently flawed and mishaps happen. And then, of course, the situational awareness, right? Realizing what you know or don't know about the situation you're in. Peter, if we turn it around, I don't know if we can call it necessarily good decision making, but what happens under pressure for pilots, or in the moment for pilots, for sailors, for people in the military, the example you also brought up, is that decisions are made under pressure faster, or are actually made at all, right? We also see them not made in business. So what do you think makes that in those situations decisions are made, when, if we take that pressure into the business world, we often get to indecision in these moments?
Mm-hmm.
What facilitates the making of decisions in those climates? What's the setup that we're missing in business?
Yeah. But well, the first thing is, from aviation, I can tell you a bad decision or a wrong decision is better than no decision. This may sound strange, but it's the truth. Because if you do not do a decision, so if you don't do a decision, it's also a decision, of course. And this decision has consequences. If I'm doing a wrong decision, that has wrong consequences. For example, when I have sparkling water, and I drink the sparkling water before I give a presentation and end the stage, I go on stage. It's not a good idea, because you will, if you have a headset, you can't, everyone will hear it. It's a bad decision. And this has bad consequences. And you learn the consequences come because of, or appear because of my bad decision. So you can learn from them and you can correct them. If you do not do a decision, this also has consequences, but you don't bring it to you don't acknowledge that they have something to do with your missing decisions. How stupid this is. You can imagine if you again take a plane, so two pilots have crashed the plane. They luckily survived. They just crawl out of the wreck and say, it has nothing to do with us. We didn't do anything. Yeah, it's stupid. So of course, if you do not do a decision, this also has consequences, but you don't take into account that they have something to do with what you didn't do. And this is the moment you feel yourself, you see yourself as a victim of circumstances. So first learning, a bad decision is better than no decision. Second learning, it's not about making good decision. It's about making less wrong decisions. So it's not about, unfortunately, I can't give you the formula for always making the right decisions. If I could, I think I would be rich and famous right now. So, but we can think about, okay, what are the major traps? What are the major leads for making wrong decisions? And we can think about this. And therefore, we can think about this decision biases, and we can think about something else. We are talking about decisions under pressure. If you, for example, I think what every one of your listeners will know this example was the Hudson River landing. I think it was 2009. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was where Captain Sullenberger. Somehow I just forgot the name. Captain Sullenberger landed this aircraft, this Airbus, on the Hudson River. They had 208 seconds from boom to boom. So from the moment they lost their engines until the moment they touched down in the Hudson River. 208 seconds, or in other words, 3.5 minutes. No one on Earth, nobody is able within 3.5 minutes to realize a sudden, threatful, horrible, chaotic situation which never happened before. To just understand the situation, understand what's going on, then from this understanding develop, 2 or 3 options to follow, then to evaluate these options against each other, decide for one, take this one, develop an action plan from it, and perform this action plan. This just doesn't know. When it comes to a crisis, you either have a plan or you will go down. It's quite easy. So, it sounds maybe it sounds a little harsh, but I am surprised always when people, for example, when I have a talk to managers, and they're totally shocked by the that an employee is leaving the company. So the employee resigned or quits, and they talk, I had no idea that this is coming. Well, no, you didn't listen. Yeah, you didn't listen.
You didn't pick up on the signals. Yeah,
and you are not prepared. Though we can do. What do you do if you're going on a sailing trip? And I hope then you are doing a safety briefing with your crew. You're talking about the most important things. What you have to do when it comes to the military is doing the drills. We are doing the simulator trainings. So you have to be prepared. Just to have a mental plan. Just in aviation, we call it to get the initial headings. So what to do first. Yeah. And I'm always astonished when I see, there are realistic scenarios, and these scenarios happens, and everybody is shocked and has no idea what to do right now.
And it's so yes, a pilot has a protocol for these situations, right? But of course, the protocol isn't written for the Hudson River and for that scenario exactly. So there's still a certain level of human improvisation in the moment that goes into it. But if you have a scenario for these type of situations, and you've been trained, then you have a start, because you're not paralyzed by indecision. You're like, okay, these are the steps I have to go to, and when a crash starts to happen, and then complemented with your experience, you can figure that out, or you stand at least a chance.
Yeah.
And the experience part, what people also sometimes fail to forget is, as they say in Europe, often there is many roads that lead to Rome. There is often not one correct decision, right? They're typically close, and the two. It's not very often true that both completely light blue and completely dark red are both true at the same time, or both effective choices. But um, sometimes it's enough to just decide to go for blue, and whether it's dark blue or light blue, it's probably all going to be okay, right?
You have to have a start because,
Yeah.
and it is the most important thing. You have to have a start because what usually happens is if a threatful, a horrible situation or horrible things come together, then we call it the startle effect. You called it, you are paralyzed, and each and every one of us know this. You're surprisingly confronted with the situations. We just, oh, what's going on here? So we have our brain is like paused. Yeah. We have no good thoughts. We are just startled. We are paralyzed. And if you have a plan for these maybe 2, 3, 5 initial minutes, then you start to act, and this closes the loop within your brain. And your brain notices, okay, I know what to do. I have options. And then the cerebrum comes back and says, if you need my advice, I would be here. So we just need the start effect, and to transfer this to average business. We we do not like to look at some problems, but these do not make the problems better.
They don't go away.
It just makes sense to do your homework, to make a scenario. What could happen if I would teach you how to fly? There's the what if technique. So we are flying, and I would always ask you, what would you do now if your engine fails, your hydraulic system drops, whatever? So I'm doing this what if, and as a manager, I can ask myself the same question: what would I do if my most important employees leave the company? What would I do if my bank is canceling my loan? What would I do if my most important customer says, I don't like you anymore? What would I do if my warehouse is burning down? What would I do? And the fun part is, fun part is the wrong word, so sorry for this, but the interesting part for this is, I call it the crisis simulator, like a flight simulator we are as pilots are training on. I do this with corporates, and when they start to do this negative brainstorming, so what could possibly happen? And then we have all these scenarios, and then we start to develop action plans. And the interesting thing is, usually after maybe 3, maximum 4 different action plans, so first response plans, they are starting to become redundant. So you see, usually you need maybe 3. Usually it's only 3. Sometimes maybe 4 different checklists. Who's doing
Responses,
what, or whatever, and you have 98% covered. And then it comes to the point what you mentioned. Of course, you can't train the Hudson River scenario, but you can train the pattern. You can train the scheme. You can train, okay, what would I do?
The concept of a crash.
In case of engine failure, total engine loss in low altitude. You can think about, okay, what would I do if? And then you are prepared.
So, Peter, I know we're starting to run out of time because, of course, decision making under pressure is my favorite subject of all times. But because you're such a speaker, this podcast also, for me, is very much about sharing some of the stories and experiences of others, because I do believe we can learn from each other's scars, right, in the context of an emergency room. Because I think there's also something around, if you're in a situation where the pressure is maybe a little less, right? So you're not a pilot, but in business, and something happens to you, that we sometimes do remember, hey, I heard about somebody who went through this, and you remember one or two things of it, and you can look it up. What did they do in that situation, and how does that help me? But you're clearly convinced of the power of storytelling with 3,500 talks and 8 books. So how do you think that stories and other people's experiences can help you get better in dealing with decision making or high pressure situations?
Well, the first and again, I would say the most important point is just to consider the fact that you're not alone.
Yeah.
If something happens, usually we tend to think I'm the only idiot in the room. And especially when it comes to failure culture and become or learning organization or what, then it's important to understand that we are not alone. So everyone is making mistakes. In German, we have a saying: everyone is walking to the toilet on their own feet. Yeah. So we are in the end, we are all the same. So this is the one part of storytelling. Second part of storytelling is that the human brain does not remember facts. When you ever learned or prepared yourself for an exam, then you know and you remember how hard it is to memorize facts. Yeah, if I give you five items to memorize, we usually struggle to just memorize 5 items over a few minutes. I told you this example with my story in the beginning. But if I put these 5 items into a story, it's very easy for us to remember a story or to remember like something like a movie or pictures. Yeah. And of course, we remember emotions. And if you now combine story, like a movie, with emotions, then you have a profound basis that the facts are also, at least the main facts are also remembered.
Yeah, and that makes your toolkit bigger, right? Because then the story becomes another tool in your toolkit as a concept that you can pull out and then deploy in your specific situation. Yeah, I love that you brought it back to the failure and the not being alone, right? I recognize that all the time, and it stops us sometimes from getting the support we need, right, in the moment, the fresh pair of eyes to do something. So if after hearing you speak here in the business emergency room, if people are like, oh, I want to know more about this guy, I want to go see him speak, I want to have him at my event, where do they go? What do they do?
Well, the easiest thing, you can go to my webpage. It's www.peterbrandl.com. Yeah. So that's the easiest. Or you send an email at office@peterbrandl.com. So it's very easy. Yeah, you can, of course, you can go to YouTube, on LinkedIn, whatever. Of course, many of my things are in German, but I hope, you get an idea of my English, so I can do it in English as well. And the thing would be, it's what we did right now. Of course, it's just a very small portion of what we can do. If you have an idea, if your listeners have an idea, or just they ask themselves the question, hey, could that be a fit? Just send me a text, send me an email, and let us talk about it. I would be happy to talk about the options.
Yeah, and for those of us that are less used to German names, Brandl is Brandl.
Right.
Peter, of course, is easy enough. That we should be able to manage. I'm glad you were here today. Thank you for sharing. And I hope our paths cross again. And I loved having you here. I will not think of the word mishap the same way. I love it when people give me a word that I also use, but then bring it up in a way that it anchors differently. That's one of my learnings from today. So thank you for that. And the crisis simulator, I think, is a takeaway. It can be a fun. You can make it part of your team building work, right? You don't have to do it 100 times. It's a relatively easy way to do, but sometimes brainstorming about some of that in a somewhat happy and energized context, maybe not when things are bleak already, can really help come up with some ideas or little things to get ready in your business. So for when things happen. So thank you for that. Thank you to the listeners for tuning in, and I hope to have you back on the next episode. And ciao. Tschüss, we should say,
Ciao,
really,
ciao.
huh?
Tschüss.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of the Business Emergency Room. If you are currently dealing with chaos or disruption in your business, please reach out. You can email, text, or call, and I will find a way to connect with you within 24 hours. I've helped others steer out of the storm, and I know I can help you too. Talk soon. Please like, subscribe, and share.